Do not watch this at night. At the end of a long, silent road, there was a house. It was an old house, the kind you see in pictures, with peeling paint and windows that looked like vacant eyes. A woman lived there all by herself. She enjoyed the quiet, the solitude, but some nights the silence was so deep it felt heavy, like a blanket smothering the world. One cold night, as the wind howled outside, her phone rang. The sound was jarring, a sharp blade cutting through the stillness. She hesitated for a moment, wondering who could possibly be calling her at this hour. Curiosity won. She picked it up. "Hello?" she said, her voice a little shaky. There was a pause, then a deep, raspy voice on the other end said two words that froze the blood in her veins. "I'm coming." The line went dead. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Was it a prank? It had to be a prank. But the voice, it sounded so real, so full of malice. She tried to laugh it off, telling herself it was just some kids messing around, but the fear was a cold knot in her stomach. The phone rang again. This time she stared at it, her hand trembling. She let it ring and ring until it stopped. A minute later it started again. Reluctantly she answered. The same deep voice spoke, low and menacing. "I'm closer now." Click. The line went silent. Panic began to set in. This wasn't a prank. This was real. She bolted around the house, checking every lock on every door and window, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps. The house that had once been her sanctuary now felt like a trap. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the leaves outside, sent a fresh wave of terror through her. She drew all the curtains, plunging the house into near total darkness, as if hiding from the world could somehow protect her. The phone rang a third time. She almost didn't answer, but a terrifying thought occurred to her. What if not answering was worse? What if it angered him? With a shaking hand, she lifted the receiver. "I can see you," the voice whispered, and she could almost feel his breath on her neck. "You look so pretty when you're scared." That was it. She slammed the phone down and with fumbling fingers dialed the police. A calm, professional voice answered. She blurted out the story, her words tumbling over each other in a frantic rush. The operator told her to stay on the line, that they would trace the call. It felt like an eternity, but finally, the operator came back. His voice was grave. "Ma'am, we've traced the call. You need to get out of the house right now. The calls, they're coming from inside your house." Her blood ran cold. Inside the house, how? She was alone. She'd checked everything. But before she could even process the information, the operator's voice changed. It dropped lower, becoming gravelly, familiar, chillingly familiar. Actually, the voice purred, "I'm not a police officer." I never hung up. The receiver slipped from her hand, clattering against the floor. He was in the house. He had been listening to her call the police. He was toying with her. She wasn't alone. She backed away from the phone, her eyes darting around the dark room, searching for a shadow that was out of place, a figure in the darkness. Her mind was screaming, but no sound came out. Where was he? The voice from the phone, still lying on the floor, spoke again, its tone suddenly laced with something new. Confusion. Wait a second. There was a long pause. There's something behind you. Behind her. 8. A new kind of fear, different from the dread of a human killer, washed over her. It was a primal fear, the fear of the unknown. She didn't want to turn around. She was terrified of what she might see. But the voice on the phone insisted, a note of genuine alarm in it now. Turn around. Right now. Slowly, her body moving as if through water, she turned, and she saw it. Standing near the old velvet couch was a boy. He couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old, almost translucent, and his clothes were from another era. He was holding the string of a small, tattered kite. He looked at her with wide, sad eyes. "Will you play with me?" he whispered, his voice like the rustling of dry leaves. A ghost. There was a ghost boy in her living room. Her mind reeled. This night just kept getting worse. Even the killer on the phone seemed taken aback. The line was silent. The menacing presence on the other end momentarily forgotten. Then, as if things weren't chaotic enough, the doorbell rang, loud, insistent buzzing that made her jump out of her skin. Who on earth could be at her door? Before she could even think about answering it, the front door splintered open. A huge man, his face hidden by a grotesque mask, burst in. He was holding a gleaming machete, raising it as he scanned the room. Now, there were 2 killers and a ghost. The scene was so absurd, so utterly terrifying, it felt like a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. The man with the machete stared at the ghost boy who was still holding his kite, then looked at the phone on the floor, then at her. He seemed just as confused as everyone else. And then the doorbell rang again. Everyone froze. The woman, the masked killer, the ghost boy, even the voice on the phone was silent. All eyes turned to the broken front door. Cautiously, the woman crept towards it. On the porch sat a small, brightly colored box. She picked it up. It felt light. With trembling hands, she opened it. Inside was a clown doll. It had a painted-on smile that was too wide, and its glass eyes seemed to follow her. A small string hung from its back. A cold dread filled her, but she felt compelled to pull it. She had to know. She tugged the string. A tinny recorded voice came from the doll. There's nowhere to hide. There's nowhere to run. And at that exact moment, the lights went out. The house was plunged into absolute, suffocating blackness. A symphony of screams erupted. The woman screamed. The masked killer with the machete screamed, a surprisingly high-pitched shriek. The ghost boy let out a faint, ethereal wail. Even the clown doll's recorded laughter seemed to join the chorus from somewhere in the dark. It was pure chaos. Then, just as suddenly as they went out, the lights flickered back on. The room was exactly as it had been. The masked killer stood frozen, his machete held awkwardly. The ghost boy was still by the couch, looking puzzled. The clown doll was on the floor, and the woman, she was standing in the middle of the room, perfectly fine. She was leaning forward slightly, one finger holding her eyelid open as she carefully adjusted her contact lens. She blinked a few times, rubbed her eye, and straightened up with a sigh of relief. "Ah, that's better," she said to no one in particular. There was a stunned silence. The voice on the phone was the first to break it. "You know what? Never mind." There was a click as the killer hung up. The ghost boy looked from the woman to the space where the phone lay, shrugged his little translucent shoulders, and simply faded away, his kite disappearing with him. The man with the machete stared at her, his weapon hanging limply at his side. He looked at the broken door, then back at her calm, unfazed expression. He slowly lowered the machete, dropped it on the floor with a clatter, turned around, and walked out of the house without a word. He didn't even bother to close the broken door behind him. The woman just stood there blinking. Apparently, some things are scarier than a killer. Some places are just worse than death. She shrugged, went to the kitchen, and started making a cup of tea. It had been a long night if you made it this far. You're one of us. Hit subscribe. You know you heard the signal.